Non pensavo che eravate così puntuali. Mi hanno detto di parlare alle 9 e alle 9 devo già parlare.
Sono le 9:02.
Va bene, 9:02. Shavuot Tov a tutti quanti. Rav Rodan mi riporta indietro a Montreal. Mi sono ricordato di un paio di cose che avevo sentito da Rav Vol Gringlas. Se intanto, se mi date il permesso, volevo dedicare una parte, questo fa Brengen, una parte all'Ilui Nishmat, una signora molto importante che è mancata a Milano giovedì, la signora Miriam Bat Yoel. Così mi è stato detto di Shabbat. Se capita che una persona Nebach ha un figlio che è religioso, allora può capitare, è un errore che capita, ma se Baruch Hashem ha 4 figli e tutti e 4 sono Yereim e Shlemim, vuol dire che l'ha fatto apposta. Vuol dire che lei era una donna che ha portato al mondo delle Neshamot così speciali che i Zechut delle mitzvot, Masim Tovim dei suoi figli saranno per lei fino a Biat Mashiach Tzidkenu. La Wolf Greenglass, va bene, una cosa che probabilmente si è già diffusa nel mondo, lui aveva preso il Tanya di SHVAT e c'è questo famoso finale del Tanya che finisce con Kadosh Baruch Hu Mechaye o Meavet Kulam Me'ain Leyesh Tamid. Aveva detto che Ain è Yud Alef Nisan, la data in cui è nato il Rebbe, Yesh è Yud Shvat in cui il Rebbe è diventato Rebbe, e questa cosa non ha Hefsek, questa cosa è Tamid. Quindi il fatto che il Rebbe da Yud Alef Nisan si è trasformato in Yud Shvat è una cosa che Chas v'Chalila non ha Hefsek, non è Sheikh Linan di Hefsek, e così andremo per l'eternità con il nostro Rebbe nato a Yud Alef Nisan. Un'altra cosa che Rav Wolf aveva detto, ci ha raccontato che c'era a Montreal un ragazzo che aveva fatto un intervento chirurgico che è andato male, Rahman al-Islam, e la situazione era molto grave, e lui ha telefonato a Rav Khadakov e ha detto a Rav Khadakov di dire al Rebbe queste parole. Quel giorno era Yud Alef Nisan. Rav Khadakov diceva che Yud Alef Nisan non si può disturbare il Rebbe, ma Rav Wolf ha detto di al Rebbe da parte mia queste parole. Che il Shiramalot dice Me'ain Yavo Ezri. I dottori non hanno dato nessuna speranza, e quindi oggi che è Yud Alef e Me'ain e quindi Yavo Ezri. E quindi Rav Khadakov è entrato nello studio del Rebbe e Baruch Hashem è guarito questa persona. Avevo raccontato che è entrato, che è tornato, che è andato a Kronaiz e ha fatto una famiglia. E questo è l'Inyan di Yud Alef, e quindi l'Inyan di Yud Alef è Yavo Ezri, sarà un nostro aiuto per tutti noi per poter uscire da questo terribile buio galut. Dato che non ho idea di cosa sia stato parlato Shabbat o stasera, sono arrivato a metà, volevo prendere un'idea che leggo, che non è mia. È un professore che aveva avuto la shlichut del Rebbe di occuparsi di studenti ebrei in un'università. Ma in quella università c'era un problema, c'erano 7.000 studenti ebrei. E lui è andato in Yechidut da Rebbe e ha detto: come faccio a occuparmi di 7.000? Sono troppi. Allora, devo fare cose generali, cose generiche, occuparmi di tutta l'università, Yehudim, lo Yehudim. Rebbe ha detto: inizia con i tuoi fratelli, poi vai avanti con gli altri. E dice: 7.000 come faccio? Allora Rebbe ha detto che, lui ha raccontato, questo si chiamava Reb Level Wolf, ha raccontato che Rebbe è diventato molto molto serio e gli ha detto: per arrivare a 7.000 bisogna iniziare con 7. E 7, ognuno devi fare in modo che questi 7, ognuno di loro faccia altri 7. E così velocemente si arriva a 7.000. La domanda è: perché Rebbe è diventato serio? È una cosa chiara che una persona da sola non può occuparsi di 7.000 studenti. Ci sono 24 ore e quindi doveva iniziare con un gruppo piccolo. Ma perché Rebbe è diventato così molto serio? E noi rispondiamo a questa cosa con un passaggio dalla parasha di Shemot fino alla parasha di Tro, dove si racconta di Moshe Rabbeinu, che Moshe Rabbeinu è stato scelto da Kadosh Baruch Hu perché lui era quello che si occupava di del suo gregge, Akadosh Baruch Hu ha visto come si occupava di ogni singolo componente del suo gregge. Questo ha fatto sì che Akadosh Baruch Hu ha detto: se così sei dedicato, se così sei completamente, dai te stesso per un piccolo Ghedi che ha sete, allora tu sei la persona giusta per prendere su di te la responsabilità di Am Israele. E cosa succede più avanti? Che quando Moshe Rabbeinu esce con tutti quanti da Mitzrayim e scende giù con Luchot Shniot, inizia una cosa che si chiama Yechidut. Vayamod Ha'am al Moshe min haboker ad ha'arev. Fino a che viene Yitro e gli dice: non ce la farai da solo. Quindi devi condividere questo peso, questa responsabilità, e devi delegarla, sarai Alafim, sarai Meot, sarai Hamishim, sarai Asarot, perché chiaramente da solo non ce la farai. Ma la domanda rimane: ok, quindi abbiamo capito che bisogna pensare in questo modo. Tra parentesi, lui gli aveva chiesto: anche in città dove c'è l'università c'è una Keilah importante. Mi occupa della Keilah o non mi occupo della Keilah? Rebbe gli ha detto: che età hanno questa Keilah? Dice: no, chiaramente non sono giovani, sono in età più avanzata. Rebbe gli ha detto che quelli che sono in età più avanzata hanno già avuto la loro occasione, e speriamo che l'hanno usata bene, per avvicinarsi ad Akadosh Baruch Hu, ma ai giovani ancora non è stata data l'occasione, quindi devi le hitmaked, ti devi dedicare in modo molto più energico con i giovani. Derech Hagav, mio papà, la Shalom, ha avuto una risposta simile dal Rebbe. Dopo qualche anno che era a Milano, è andato in Yechidut e ha detto al Rebbe che non crede che sta facendo qualcosa a Milano. E il Rebbe gli ha detto: perché dici così? Dice: perché faccio shiurim, faccio drashot, venerdì sera, Shabbat, parlo con la gente, non vedo niente che cambia. Tutto rimane uguale. La gente viene, la gente partecipa, la gente ascolta, Tachles rimane tutto uguale. Allora il Rebbe gli ha detto che devi dividere in due la Keilah, i giovani e i meno giovani. Quelli meno giovani, se non peggiorano, è un tuo successo. Se non peggiorano, è una tua conquista. Quindi il fatto che loro, nel livello che sono, rimangono, questo è tutta la tua ashka, tutto il tuo lavoro che stai facendo. Però il Rebbe dice: questo chiaramente va bene per una gente di una certa età in poi, ma con i giovani no. Il Rebbe ha detto a mio papà: ai giovani abbiamo l'occasione, l'opportunità di poter fare molto di più, e bisogna mettere molte energie in più con i giovani, perché da loro può nascere qualcosa di molto più forte. Torniamo a questa storia dell'università. Abbiamo visto che lui ha raccontato che era diventato molto, molto, molto serio prima di dare questa risposta. Una cosa interessante che Moshe Rabbeinu non ha accettato così velocemente la risposta, il consiglio di suo suocero Yitro, perché è vero che sono 600.000, più donne e più bambini, sono tantissime. Moshe Rabbeinu da solo come poteva fare? Ma è come chiedere a una mamma di quale figlio occuparsi. Deve occuparsi di tutti. E quindi è vero che alla fine doveva delegare, ma questo l'ha fatto con Covedrosh, l'ha fatto con una difficoltà, una sofferenza, perché Moshe Rabbeinu aveva a cuore tutti quanti. Quindi per lui delegare era la più grande sofferenza, come se Chas v'Shalom una mamma deve delegare. La stessa cosa abbiamo visto che nel Mahamar del Rebbe, quando Rebbe ha parlato nel Mahamar di Avram Avinu che diceva Vaikra Sham Beshem Hashem Kelolam, il Rebbe ha detto nel Mahamar Tafshin Yud Aleph, se ascoltiamo l'audio, Altikri Vaikra e la Vayakri. E quando Rebbe diceva Vayakri vuol dire dovevi delegare agli altri. Avram Avinu faceva in modo che anche gli altri avvicinassero altri. 7 diventano 7 per 7 fino a che si arriva ai 7.000. Il Rebbe in un modo molto, molto strano, in un modo che forse con quello che stiamo dicendo stasera forse possiamo avere un'idea del motivo per il quale il Rebbe non riusciva a parlare, talmente piangeva del fatto che era Vayakri e non Vaikra. E uno dice Vaikra, Vayakri, perché il Rebbe piange? Perché il Rebbe è il papà di ognuno di noi e chiaramente il popolo ebraico sono 20 milioni e chiaramente il Rebbe ha capito che bisogna mandare shluchim e ha mandato shluchim, ognuno fa quello che il braccio del Rebbe che continua e ogni shliach deve fare altri shluchim, però il Rebbe piangeva perché avrebbe voluto fare tutto lui, avrebbe voluto avere un contatto direttissimo, sicuramente ce l'aveva, ma non nel diretto begashmiut begilui, con ognuno di noi ha dovuto delegare. Forse questo è il motivo per il quale il Rebbe, quando ha detto Vaikra, alti cri, Vaikra e la Vaikri, il Rebbe si è messo così a piangere, una cosa che non... questa è un'interpretazione che qualcuno ha dato, che forse possiamo dire che questo era uno dei motivi per il quale il Rebbe ha avuto così tanta difficoltà a YUD SHVAT Shinudale da dire questa frase. Benissimo, siccome abbiamo iniziato bene, siamo nei tempi, dobbiamo continuare coi tempi. Shavua Tov a tutti quanti. Bezrat Hashem, ci vediamo a Yerushalayim Ira Kodesh.
תודה רבה.
הרב וגנר, אתה בפנים? אוקיי. אם אפשר לפתוח לרב וגנר את המיקרופון.
זה יכול לפתוח לבד, זה לא עובד כמו בזומים האחרים.
שבוע טוב. לחיים, לחיים. In English, in inglese, or in Hebrew?
שעה ראשונה באנגלית, אחרי זה בעברית, אוקיי?
לחיים, לחיים. גוטה וואך. So we have now in the world a new phenomena. In the pasuk it says, "Ve'atem teluktu le'echad echad b'nei Yisrael." The Eibishter says, when it comes the time of Mashiach, "Atem teluktu le'echad echad." Hashem is going to take every single Jew by the hand. And it's going to be, each Jew will be echad, echad, but yet will be teluchtu, gathered together. So now with the Zoom Farbringings, everybody's echad, echad. Everybody's on their own and in their own place, whether in South Africa or in Milano or wherever a person is found. And yet it's v'atem teluchtu, we're all gathered together. So it's the preparation that we should come very quickly to the fulfillment of the promise of Yatam to look to Echad Echad Bnei Yisrael, that the Eibishter should gather us all together. We should all be gathered together, where each Jew is on his own, but yet for each Jew we're all together as one. So L'chaim, L'chaim, we should have it mamish right now, that we should all be gathered together in Yerushalayim, in HaKodesh, in Eretz Yisrael, in Beis HaMikdash, etc. L'chaim. Tonight is a very special time, as everyone knows. Shabbos was YUD SHVAT, but tonight, Motzi Shabbos, is the night of YUD Aleph SHVAT, which on one hand, that's like a hemshech to YUD SHVAT, and on the other hand, it's something on its own. It's a whole new Metzias. We know that the Rebbe's Farbrengen, exactly 70 years ago, was on Wednesday night, early YUD Aleph SHVAT, and that's when the Rebbe said the Maimer Basi Lagani, in the year Tavshin YUD Aleph. So while YUD SHVAT was 71 years ago, that was Tavshin YUD, YUD Aleph SHVAT was 70 years ago. And it's an interesting connection. Here is another chapter of Basi Ligani. This year we start chapter 11. This year we start Perek YUD Aleph of Basi Ligani. In general, the idea of Perek YUD Aleph, when a person hears the words chapter 11, what comes to mind? Not necessarily chapter 11, like sometimes comes to mind some other things about chapter 11, but chapter 11 in the Rambam, in Hilchis Malachim, in the Laws of Kings, chapter 11 is the Laws of Mashiach, the Laws of Malach HaMashiach, and chapter 11 and chapter 12. The concept of 11, when we're talking about the idea of Malachim, especially we're coming YUD SHVAT, as we know, is Rosh Hashanah LaMalachim. YUD SHVAT is the Rosh Hashanah of the idea of the kingship, of accepting the Nesias, the kings, the idea that's connected to kings, to Malachim. And when it comes to Malachim, to Hilchis Malachim, 11, number 11 is connected specifically with Mashiach, with Melech HaMashiach. Now when we talk about the idea of 11 of YUD Aleph, the Rambam starts with Melech HaMashiach, Hasid Lamed, the whole idea of Mashiach. What's special about number 11 in connection to number 10? And as we said, the ice of Basi Ligani is also number 11. And it's not only that, but in the ice of Basi Ligani that we start this year, while chapter 10 of Basi Ligani is the end of the previous Maimer SHVAT. It ends off the first two Mamarim of Basi Ligani and SHVAT. Chapter 11 of Basi Ligani starts another Maimer, the Maimer of Purim. The Purim Dikim Maimer, it starts chapter 11 of Basi Ligani. What's the whole concept of chapter 11, of number 11? What is so special about 11? So first of all, we know that the Rebbe tells us that with regards to the two numbers of 10 and 11, while the number 10 shows on the completion and the fulfillment of a spiritual number, and like we see in number 10, that the concept of 10 spheres, 10 is complete. 10 is when you get the roundup of all the numbers. 1 with 0, when you complete the singles and you get to 10. 10 shows on in spiritual world, in the Ruchnistic world, completion. 11 shows on a new level, which is completely, totally higher and above the spiritual world. It reaches a whole new existence. And the difference between 10 and 11, the Rebbe also explains in the Maimer Basi Ligani, in Tafshin Chaf Aleph, which was the beginning of chapter 11 of Perek of YUD Aleph of Basi Ligani. And the Rebbe explains that while in chapter 10 of Basi Ligani, which is the end of the Maimer SHVAT, over there the Frierdiker Rebbe explains the idea of the Shleimus HaAvayda, the completion of the Avayda, and he says that where is it in a Jew? It comes in the idea of tzava. Tzava means the tzivos Hashem, like we read in the Torah today, that when the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, Yatsu called Tzivat Hashem, Eretz Mitzrayim, all of the soldiers of Hashem left the land of Egypt. What is tzivos Hashem? Tzivos Hashem is the completion of the Avayda of a Jew when a Jew gets to the level of tzivos Hashem. And yet, in Perek YUD of Basi Ligani, the Rebbe says that the Frierdiker Rebbe over there says that tzava means three things. Tzava means time, an amount of time, zman mugdal, a limited time. Tzava means tzivim b'yofi, the beauty, which means that in an amount of time that a person was given in this world, the person reaches of connecting to the Eibishter in the world. And then there's a third thing, which Tzava means a soldier, an army. In chapter 10 of Basi Ligani, the Frierdiker Rebbe talks about all three ideas of Tzava. And the Rebbe explains, chapter 10 of Basi Ligani, the Frierdiker Rebbe is talking about what's achana for that Avodah. The preparation that prepares us for doing what we're supposed to do. We have the amount of time that enables us to serve Hashem in this world. We have the beauty, the way that we serve Hashem in this world. But that's not the
הרב וגנר, שומעים לא טוב. הרב וגנר, שומעים לא טוב. אם אפשר להתקרב יותר.
שומעים לא טוב? I can get the microphone too. עכשיו יותר טוב.
קצת, כן. יותר טוב, יותר טוב. עכשיו יותר טוב.
Oh, okay. The Rebbe says in chapter 11 of Basi Ligani, that's where we talk about the Avodah itself of Tzava. What's the Avodah of Tzava? Kabbalah Seil, when a Jew is a soldier of Hashem. That's something totally different than what there was in chapter 10. Chapter 10 is how you do the Avodah. Chapter 11 is the fact that a person, through Kabbalah Seil, through being a soldier of Hashem, can transform the physical world. That's the power of Netzach, the power of victory. Now, before going on, unless it turns into a speech, chas v'shalom, so we have to say l'chaim and maybe give a story, because otherwise it becomes like a drasha. What's the difference between a farbrengen and a drasha? You know, it's an interesting thing. If you want to understand the difference between a farbrengen and a drasha, it's something which the Rebbe actually spoke about in the very first week after YUD SHVAT, Tafshin YUD. And the Rebbe said, but that by the world, they say espedim. And by chsidim, we tell stories. Now, what's the difference between espedim and stories? A hesped is in a eulogy. And a eulogy is maybe also stories. What's the difference between a hesped and stories? A hesped is a nice drasha, how wonderful this person was. Stories is a practical lesson, giving a person the ability to actually connect to it and understand it. A drasha could be a long speech where a person can hear or listen or not listen, because the mila of the Zoom farbrengens is nobody knows if you're listening or not. You can go to sleep and you leave your Zoom on all night. Yeah, who's gonna know? Nobody will ever know the difference. But even if you're listening and talking, maybe the person who's talking isn't talking too much, and it's very inspiring. But inspiring doesn't necessarily mean anything. Inspiring is a nice drasha. That's also connected, like we said, the difference between 10 and 11. Whereas a farbrengen is something which isn't inspiring. Now, farbrengen goes into the kishkes of the person, goes into the insides of the person, and it takes a person and makes it changes something. And for a farbrengen, there has to be stories. And for a farbrengen, there has to be something. It can't be, it's not a drasha, it's not a learning, it's not an understanding. It's a whole different thing of farbrengen. By a farbrengen, hopefully we can sing a niggin. By a farbrengen, we can say some l'chaim. And by a farbrengen, a person comes out of the farbrengen, a person doesn't come out inspired, a person comes out different. A person comes out different from a farbrengen. So I'll say l'chaim and I'll tell a story before we continue on with the idea of 10 and 11. It's an unbelievable night tonight, and it's amazing what's going on with our night. It's the Oir Yud Aleph Shvat 70 years. Yud Shvat wasn't 70 years; it was 71 years, which is also an in itself. But Yud Aleph Shvat is 70 years. 70 years is not a celebration. 70 years is not just that we're sitting and we're having something we're commemorating an anniversary. 70 years is something which is alive. But listen to this story, L'chaim. This story might help us understand what's going on. The Frierdiker Rebbe, the Baal Hilul of YUD, when the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America, there was a certain Jew, an elderly Jew, who was a tailor. And this person was a self-declared atheist. One of his things of being a self-declared atheist, he hated rabbis. Okay, we can't really blame him for that, but that's just the fact. He hated rabbis. Rabbis are going to come and they're going to try and they're going to want to make me. He couldn't stand rabbis. He had a tailor shop on, I think it was the 11th floor, if I'm not mistaken, or the 10th or 11th floor of a building in Manhattan or wherever it was. I don't remember the exact pratim, but I think it was in Manhattan. He had a tailor shop up on a high floor of the building. And he didn't want anybody to come bother him, no rabbis. Anyway, the Frierdiker Rebbe somehow had some type of connection to him. And the Frierdiker Rebbe asked, Frierdiker Rebbe was already not walking. He was going around in a wheelchair. And he asked those who were with him to take him upstairs. Apparently there wasn't an elevator. There was no wheelchair-friendly stairs. To take him up the steps. We're talking about 10 floors, 11 floors, which is a mishugana type of tircha, of going out of his way to go upstairs. And they told him, what are you doing? It's a waste of time. This guy will not listen to you. He'll throw you out of his office. Frierdiker Rebbe said, I want to go up there. And the Frierdiker Rebbe worked hard. He went up the stairs, etc., until he got there. Frierdiker Rebbe came up the steps in the wheelchair, schlepping upstairs. And the Frierdiker Rebbe comes into this person's office. And the man, of course, as predicted, said, what do you want from me? I don't want you here in my office. I don't want to hear speeches from you. I don't want to hear from you anything. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, I didn't come to preach. I didn't come to give you a speech. He said, so what did you come for? He said, I came to fix a button on my coat. A tailor, I came to fix a button on my coat. I came here to sew a button onto my coat. And the man turns to the Frierdiker Rebbe and he says, I don't believe that you schlepped up 10 floors, 10 stories, just in order to sew a button on your coat. And the Frierdiker Rebbe immediately responded, I don't believe that your neshama schlepped from the highest world into this world just in order to sew buttons onto coats. And the man was astounded. And he took, and apparently it made a strong impact. I don't know, it would be nice to say he did complete tshuva, but I don't remember if that was the end of the story. But that's not even the point. The point is that this is a story which is talking to every single one of us. Our neshama came down from the highest place. Our neshama schlepped down from the highest place in the world. For what? For avodah, in order to do something, to accomplish something. But there's two parts to that. There's something called number 10, which means to accomplish something, to perfect what we're doing, to use out our time, which is the most important thing that there can be, to have a beautiful idea of our avodah that's so beautiful and amazing. But that's still not the reason why our neshama schlepped all the way from the highest worlds. Our neshama schlepped down here from the highest worlds for number 11, not just for number 10. Our neshama schlepped here up from the highest worlds, not only in order to reach perfection. Our neshama schlepped down from the highest worlds in order to transform, to go beyond perfection, to get involved, to get involved in the world in the number 11, which is above 10, above the world, above spirituality, to transform every single aspect of the world through the midah of Netzach, victory. That's what our neshama came down for. And that's something which we're talking about. 70 years ago, exactly 70 years ago on this night, is when the Rebbe accepted. What did the Rebbe accept? The Rebbe was already Rebbe, perhaps from when the Rebbe was born. I'll go even so far as to venture, and I believe that everyone agrees that it's true, the Rebbe was Rebbe from Sheishas Yimei Bereishis. From the moment of YUD SHVAT Tavshin YUD, when there was the Stalkus, the passing of the previous Rebbe, there was already the beginning of the Rebbe being the leader, as the Pasuk says, V'zorach HaShemesh, Uva HaShemesh, the moment the sun of one tzaddik sets, the son of the other tzaddik rises. And it was clear. It wasn't something which you needed. It wasn't something that you need to prove. It was clear to every single chassid. It was clear to every single Jew from the 10th of Shvat, Tavshin Yud 5-7-10. Who was giving the orders? Who was answering questions? Who was leading the flock? Who was giving all the miracles and doing whatever has to be done? No question about it. What happened on Yud Shvat Tavshin Yud Aleph? 70 years ago, what happened? What changed? On the 10th of Shvat Tavshin Yud Aleph 5-7-11. In fact, on the eve of the 11th of Shvat 5-7-11. That's when not only was the Rebbe the leader as before, that's when the Rebbe set the tone. That's when the Rebbe put down the mission. That's when the Rebbe put down the cards and set up for us what our mission and our goal as the 7th generation. The difference between 10 and 11 is like the difference between 1 and infinity. 10 is beautiful. 10 is amazing. 10 is complete. 11 is the actual mission and the actual goal. And it's on the 11th of Shvat, Tavshin Yud Aleph, which is 70 years ago, and now we're going beyond 70. 70 is 7 times 10. Now we're going into the 11 part already as well of that. And it's not just a nice, beautiful number, 70. It's not a number, because if it's a number, it's nothing. If it's an anniversary of celebrating that Baruch Hashem, the Eibishter, gave us a Rebbe, it's also a beautiful thing, but it's nothing. 70 years means that now is not an anniversary. Now's a time when every single Jew, when every single person upon the face of the earth is able to connect to the essence of number 11, to the essence of the goal of the mission that the Rebbe set out for us. Bring the Shekhinah down here into this world. Bring the revelation of Mashiach. And it's not just a nice thing. It's not just a 70-year anniversary, and it's not just a nice story and a beautiful thing to talk about. It's real. It's real. It's as real as it can be. And that's something which you can't have it just like that. There's no such a thing. This is something which a verbrengen means that we have that power right now to accomplish, to connect to the reality of 70, to the reality of what it's all about, to the reality of bring down this galus of Mashiach into this world. You know, there's a lot of times, there's Ayem Yom actually, where the Rebbe writes the following: Al ta'aminu l'nevi'ei hasheker. Don't believe, it's a strong word, a strong word. The false prophets. A false prophet is a strong word. Hamavtichim lochem Yeshuas v'nechames achrei klois hamilchama. Don't dare believe the false prophets who promise you that soon things will be good. This is being said, the statement was said by the Frierdiker Rebbe and recorded by the Rebbe in Hayom Yom during the years of the Second World War, during the years of the Holocaust, during the years when the Jewish people was facing a situation which never in history has there been such a strong and terrible situation. And there were many people giving speeches at the time. Speeches versus Fabrengens. There were many people giving speeches in shuls, giving speeches from pulpits, giving speeches from political places, from political stages, and promising, yes, there's a war going on now, but after this war is over, the world will change. There will be a new world order. There'll be a new world order, they told them. Things will be different. And they explained it in all the amazing ways that they explained it. And the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe in Hayom Yom called all these people two words: Nevi'ei HaSheker, false prophets. And the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe in Hayom Yom continues to say, Zichru Dvar Hashem al Yidei Nevi'ei. Remember the words of Hashem through his real prophets. Orur HaGever Asher Yiftach Ba'adam V'sam Basar Zroyai. Cursed is the man who will have faith in man and he places flesh as his arm. And Baruch HaGever Asher Yiftach B'Hashem V'Hoy Hashem Yiftach. And the Rebbe says, and like it was also in Hayom Yom just 3 days ago, prepare yourself and the world to greet Mashiach. We're in the same type of time now. We're in the same situation now, 77 years later after the Rebbe said this in Hayom Yom. We're in the same exact situation. The world is facing a turmoil. Nobody knows what to make of it. We have people giving speeches, rabbis from pulpits, politicians from stages, and who knows what else. And we're told that these are the Nevi'ei HaSheker. They're promising us Yeshua's v'nechamis achrei klois hamilchama. They're telling us there'll be a new world order which will come. A new world order which is coming towards us. Just listen to me. And this one is saying, listen to me and wear a mask. The other one is saying, listen to me and sanitize your hands. The other one is saying, listen to me and make a vaccine. And the other one is saying, listen to me and don't make a vaccine. Everybody's giving their own drushes of what they want to say. And each one is promising that his story is what's going to save you. And the Rebbe says they're all Nevi'ei HaSheker, they're false prophets. Listen to the prophet of Hashem and the prophecy that he says. Cursed is the man who trusts in man. Because when you trust in man, that becomes what you get. You get exactly whatever man can give you, which is nothing, zero. Blessed is the man who trusts in Hashem. Hashem tells us, I'm giving this for a reason, for something. The Frierdiker Rebbe was once told during the years of the war. Someone said L'chaim, Fabrengen, and he said to the Frierdiker Rebbe, there should be Yeshua's v'nechamis. Yeshua's v'nechamis. It was during the war years. Terrible times for the Jewish people. He said there should be Yeshua's v'nechamis. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, no. Ein Yeshua aber arichtike. We're not looking for Yeshuas, for salvations, plural, for nechamais, for consolation, plural. We're looking for one salvation, one Yeshua, but the right one, because that's going to take care of everything. Because you know what? If we're going to make now a world prayer, And we're going to daven to Hashem and say, Hashem, please take away from us this plague. And as terrible as this plague is, and no one likes it and no one wants it, not the plague and not anything that comes with it. But we're being extremely foolish when we do this, because Hashem will take away this plague. And then in 10 years from now, we're going to be worried about, I don't know, the nuclear bomb from Iran. And then 10 years later, we'll have some other plague to worry about. Don't be foolish. Hashem sent us this for something. Hashem sent us this for a reason. Hashem sent us this for a reason which we don't understand. I'm not claiming to understand, and whoever tells you they understand, don't believe them. But what we do know is what Hashem wants us to do. Hashem is telling us, listen to the true prophet. Listen to the prophecy that the Rebbe told us 30 years ago, when the world was in a similar state of confusion. On Shabbos, Parshas Shmois, on Shabbos, Parshas Va'era, on Shabbos, Parshas Boi, the times of YUD SHVAT, the times around YUD SHVAT, when the world was in a similar state of confusion. When a madman in Iraq was threatening to Chas v'Sholem wipe off Eretz Yisrael from the face of the map, and he had the ability to do it. And the Rebbe at that time said, the Rebbe quoted the words of the Medrash, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer Lahem L'Yisrael, Hashem says to the Jewish people, Banai, my children, Al Tisyaru, don't fear. Kol ma she'asisi, everything that I've done, lo yasisi ela b'shvilchem, I did only for your sake. Higi azman gulaschem, the time of your redemption has arrived. This is the words that the Rebbe quoted again and again, exactly 30 years ago. 30 years later, we don't understand why it's 30 years later, and we have to listen to this now. But the fact that we don't understand doesn't mean anything. The fact that we don't understand only means that we have to tap into the power of Netzach, of victory, which doesn't depend on understanding or on feeling. It depends on an essence. And right now, 30 years after that, 70 years after the Rebbe set the goal for our generation and told us, this is what your mission is. 70 years later, now's the time not to hear speeches and not to celebrate an anniversary of 70 years, but to connect to that reality and to go beyond 10, to go to the number 11, that now, after 70 years is when we're actually going to connect to the words that Rebbe told us in the Maimer. We're going to connect to the reality of bringing the Shechina B'Tachtonim, of bringing this galus, the revelation of Mashiach, because that's it. That's why the world is in turmoil, because Hashem is saying, my children, I love you so much, and I want you to finally push and bring about the ultimate purpose of your seventh generation, the ultimate purpose of the world, the ultimate purpose of the universe, the ultimate purpose of the entire history. Bring it already. Bonai says, the Eibishter, my children, don't be afraid, and don't put your trust in man, and don't start saying that this is going to save us and that's going to save us, because there is something which will save us. The whole reason why Hashem sent this to us, what will save us is one thing and one thing only, Mashiach. And Hashem tells us, connect to it. Bring it about. Bring it on. Make it happen. Hashem says to us, my dear kinderlach, my dear children, I've moved, I've shaken up the entire world for you, for your sake. Connect to it. Make it real. Make it real. Make it really happen. And this is what we're being told now. This is the words that we're being told now by Hashem. This is the reality that we're being told now by Hashem. Make it happen. Make it real. And like the Rebbe says in the Maimer of Basi Legani, exactly 70 years ago, the Rebbe says the difference between Rabbi Akiva and Avraham Avinu. Although Rabbi Akiva is a very great man, and that's an understatement. The entire Torah Shabbal Peh is based on Rabbi Akiva. The crown achievement of Rabbi Akiva's life was that he gave his life up. He was burnt to sanctify the name of Hashem. His whole life he waited, when will I merit to be able to demonstrate my love for Hashem? It's an amazing thing. It's an unbelievable thing. We told that those who give their lives al Kiddush Hashem, their place is in the highest possible place near the throne of Hashem. And yet, when it comes to the Maimer Basi Legani, the Rebbe says that's still not what we are looking for. We are the seventh from the first. We're looking for a different type of Mesiras Nefesh. Not number 10, because Rabbi Akiva's Mesiras Nefesh perhaps is the ultimate of number 10. The completion, the highest level possible. But that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the Mesiras Nefesh of number 11, which is you don't look for Mesiras Nefesh. You're not looking for any type of levels. We're not searching to complete our mission. We're searching to do our mission, to fulfill our mission. It's not about tzava from time. Which is an unbelievably amazing thing, use every moment which we have to. It's not about tzava beauty, setting everything up in the proper place, including everything in the job that we do. That's the most amazing thing which we have to do, but that's still not what it's all about. It's about tzava, the simple soldier that goes and says, I was given a mission. I'm going to do my mission. And if Mesiras Nefesh is what's going to be needed for it, I'll do that also. But that's not, I'm not searching for Mesiras Nefesh. I'm going out to call out in the name of Hashem and to make others call out as well. That's it, nothing else. And that's something the Frierdiker Rebbe said, something that the Rebbe quoted very often, that a soldier doesn't need a head. The only reason why a soldier has a head is so that his right, and that's it. There's no head, there's no cheshbainis, there's no calculations. Calculations, that was number 10. We don't make any calculations. We just go like soldiers and we go. But one thing is very important, and the Rebbe quoted that often as well. When a soldier goes up to war, he does it with a happy march. He goes out there singing a happy march, because that's the only way to go out to war. Even though he's going out there and there's the enemy from all sides. He's going out there and people are losing their lives from all sides. There's bullets shooting from all sides. And yet he goes with a happy song, with a happy march, because that's what a soldier is. He has his rifle strapped to his head, and that's all that there is. And he goes out there with a smile on his face and a happy march, and he says, I'm marching, and I will win. Not I might win, not I want to win, not I want to accomplish one thing or the other. In the Maimer of Basi Legani Tafshin Chaf Aleph, that's what the Rebbe explains. That's the ice of this year, Netzach. Netzach doesn't mean I want to conquer one thing or the other, as wonderful as conquest is. Netzach means I want, not I want. I will, and I must be victorious, and nothing in the world will stand in my way. I will achieve victory with a happy niggin on my lips, and marching forward, I will achieve victory. There is no other option. That's the only way it can be, and that's the only way it will be. And that's exactly what we come in YUD Aleph. We come in YUD Aleph, and we're given this marching orders by our commander-in-chief. We're given the marching orders, and we're told, march forward. It's 70 years, 7 times 10. we're going now into 71, which is 11, 7 times 11, in whichever way you want to calculate it for all the mathematicians. But 7 times, and we're going instead of just 10, 11, but we're coming from completion of Deir Shvi. We're coming now above that to the one that's above the 7, and we're marching to bring it down and to actually achieve victory, and there is no other option. And if we don't understand it, that's amazing, because that means we're soldiers. Because if we understood it, then that would mean we're in the wrong place. In Netzach, you don't understand anything. In Netzach, you don't even feel anything. In Netzach, you go forward with Kabbalah soil, and you know you will win the war, and you know that nothing has to make sense. It doesn't make a difference. But right now, at the year 70, in the year Tafshin Pei Aleph, right now when we go from 80 to 181, this is the time we will, and we must, and we will achieve this victory, because there is no other way. And this is what the Rebbe gave us. This is the marching orders which we want to accomplish, which we have to accomplish, and which we will accomplish without any question in the world. We are marching, and we won. And this is where we are, and this is what we're all about, and this is what we're going to do. And how do we do it? It was one way. We listen to what the Rebbe told us. We listen to the orders and the commands that the Rebbe gave us. And the Rebbe told us, learn about Mashiach, teach others about Mashiach, and most importantly, le'oideid es rucham shel bnei Yisrael. Go around and be spread like a virus. Make it go viral, the message of hope, the message of light, the message of joy, the message which tells us and infuses everyone with the full hope. And when I say, who can I reach? 2 people, 3 people. Let the people who are able to reach 10,000 people, let them do it. And we say no. If you reach 3 people, and those 3 people reach 3 people each, and those 3 reach 3 people each, as we've all already heard and seen all these presentations that show us that within 2-3 days, you've reached a few million people. Go out there and give out the message of hope, the message of strength, the message of light, that Banai, the time has arrived. The time of the Gula has arrived. We're about to witness the full culmination, the completion of the number 70, the completion of 7. We're about to witness it, and every single one of us has to march forward with the greatest simcha, because Hashem loves us, and He says, my kinderlach, I love you, and that's why I did what I did. And Hashem says, I gave you a Rebbe because I wanted the commander-in-chief who's going to lead you, who's going to be able to lead you straight over into Gula. So l'chaim, as we're now on Matzah Yud Shvat, on early Yud Aleph Shvat, we're coming from Parshas Boy, which is the Parsha of Geula, but we've entered now Vayihi Bishalach Parei Yisa'am Uvenei Yisrael Yetzim Biyad Rama. We've now read by Minchan Shabbos, and it's on the Chitas of today, is Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, Yetzim, are leaving Galus, Biyad Rama, with an upheld hand, with an open and upheld head, with a strong and courageous and full of faith and full of strength and simcha. We're now leaving Galus, and we're going together with Malkeinu B'Reishenu, with our king at our head, at our lead, who will lead us immediately to Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, to the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, l'chaim, l'chaim. there a way to make a niggin?
No. A Benoni, maybe a Benoni.
Chaim. The Rebbe told many times a story. Chaim Avraham. The Rebbe told many times a story that they would tell about what happened in Italy. I don't think much changed in the 70 years since the Rebbe told that story. But they say that the way it went when there was a train, was when trains were first, it was a new thing, trains. And everyone came to see this new amazing thing, the train. When it's pfeift, it's whistling and it's letting out steam and And it's making a lot of noise, but nothing's happening because they forgot to connect the cars to the engine. So the train is going and fifing and making all the noise and all the whistling and letting out all the steam, but it's not accomplishing anything. And the Rebbe told this story many times, and the Rebbe explained what the lesson is. Sometimes, and like we said before, you can have a speech, or you can have even number 10. Everything's good and everything's perfect and everything's amazing. But if you don't connect the cars to the engine, it's helft nicht. Our job, our mission today, we have to connect the cars to the engine. The Rebbe is doing his thing. And you can just imagine what it means, 70 years, what's happening. With the Rebbe Rayatz in time with the Rebbe Rashab. Good. It's even longer ago. It's a timeless story. But the point of it is we have to connect, and we can connect, and we must connect. And our connection means migitza chiber. And that's what happens by a fabrengen. By a fabrengen, the Friedrich Rebbe wrote a letter about Gdeila Shimusha Shel Teira Yeser Milimuda. Serving Torah is more important and greater than learning Torah. And Friedrich Rebbe explains that Shimusha Shel Torah is a chassidische Fabrengen. You can learn Torah. Learning is wonderful and beautiful. And you'll understand the concepts that you learned. And you'll even learn chassidus, and you'll understand the concepts. And you'll learn an Aveda dike maimer or a Skala dike maimer. And it all makes sense, and you can chazer it, you can repeat it, you can repeat it inside, you can repeat it by heart, you can explain it, you can teach it, you can give mishalim and analogies, it's beautiful. But it's still not there. Like the Rebbe said one time in a Fabrengen, actually a Fabrengen from 70 years ago, from Tafshin YUD Aleph and a Maimer, Mishpatim, coming up in a few weeks. And the Rebbe said the following: what's the difference between the worlds of Biyah, of Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah, and the world of Atzilus? And the Rebbe said that in the worlds of Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah, and the lower worlds down here, we know that it's true, we understand that it's true, but it's not real. We know that the Eibishter exists. We understand that we can explain it. It doesn't change us because it's not real. And the Rebbe said a line the following: comes along Atzilus and says, not only we know that this is the reality, not only we understand this is the reality, this is the reality. That's the power of Netzach. It's not only an understanding, it's not only a feeling, it's real. When we connect by a chassidische Fabrengen, and we connect the cars to the engine. We connect the cars to the engine, we connect to the Rebbe, and we know that this is real. And this reality is something which it's up to us to do. I heard once an interesting story in some 70 by a Fabrengen. I don't know if I'm saying it 100% right, but I don't know if it makes a difference. They say there was a couple, and they worked together. You know, I don't know if it's good or bad when couples work together, but this was the way it was for them. And what was their job? They would steal. They would go out at night, and they went when the moon was out, so it was light, and they would each go to a different corner, and they would steal. They would rob, break into. houses, ich weiß was, they would rub. And it comes one night, and the moon is brightly lit. And the husband, he was tired, he's sleeping. And his wife sends him a message. She says, it's such a beautifully bright night. How can you sleep? The mashal is a mashal that Chassidim would say by a Fabregner. It's such a beautifully bright night. How can we sleep? It's such a night, early YUD SHVAT, Shnas HaShivim. Became in Schlafen. How can someone sleep such a night? And it's not just about sleeping. How can we sleep? It's also a question, how can we sleep instead of sitting and being alive? Alive means one thing. Alive means Vayikra Sham B'Shem Avaye Keil Elam, calling out in the name of the Eibishter, Al Tikra Vayikra Ela Vayakri. And like the Rebbe says in the end of the Maimer, that we do the Aveda of the Rishon of the first one, which apparently is talking about the Alter Rebbe, that just like Avraham Avinu, he would come to places where they didn't know about Yiddishkeit, they didn't know about Getlichkeit, they didn't even know about Aleph Beis. And he would come to these places and he would put himself on a side, and he would not only do Vayikra, but Vayakri would cause that the other person who until now didn't even know about Aleph Beis, he should also scream. And what should he scream? Not Keil Ha'elam, but Keil Elam. Not that there's two separate entities, that there's an Eibishter and there's a world, and it happens to be that the Eibishter is the Balabas, he is the boss of the world. But rather, Keil Elam, it's one existence. That one existence, that's Yud Aleph. In Yud, there's Kedusha. There's an Eibishter and there's a world. In Yud Aleph, there's no difference. And in Yud Aleph, it doesn't matter if you're dealing with a Jew who knows Shas, or you're dealing with a Jew who doesn't know Aleph Beis. It's all the same thing, because you have the same mission to cause him to scream out, Keil Elam. There's the famous story of this guy that went. He came to a Chabad house, and they began teaching him things, one thing at a time, one step at a time. And so they taught him Mivtzoim. They taught him that when you meet another Jew, you have to teach him how to keep mitzvahs. But they didn't yet teach him about Yom Tov. So he was traveling. It was the first day of Sukkot. He was traveling on the airplane on Yom Tov, and he went around with the Lulav and Esrig to make sure that people who need a Sheikh Lulav and Esrig on the airplane on Sukkot and Yom Tov. And that's what it means, Vayakri. The other guy doesn't even know about Aleph Beis. He did not know Aleph Beis yet, but he was already taught Vayakri, that you have to call out and make others also scream out about the Eibishter. This is the reality. This is the truth. This is what the Rebbe is demanding of us. If there's a Jew somewhere in the world, you know, it's an amazing thing. The Maimer Basi Legani, Tafshin Yud Aleph, is a Maimer, and I'm not necessarily someone who can claim that I know all the Mamarim of history, or even some of the Mamarim of history, but I don't believe that anywhere in the history of the world there was ever such a Maimer. A Maimer, the number one, the Rebbe mentions the names of each one of the Rabbeim 4 times. 4 times the Rebbe goes through the names of all the Rabbeim. In addition, one of the times that the Rebbe goes through the names of all the Rabbeim is a story about each one of the Rabbeim. And in addition, during the Maimer, the Rebbe stops 3 times and asks to sing the Nigunim of all the Rabbeim, starting from first the Beinini and the Nigun of the Rebbe Rashab. Then the next stop was to sing the Nigun of the Rebbe Marash and of the Tzemach Tzedek. And then after, at the end of the Maimer, the Rebbe has to sing the Nigun on the middle of the Rebbe and the Alter Rebbe. It's a mind-boggling thing. the Rebbe was bringing down, and not then 70 years ago, today 70 years later, it's happening. The Rebbe is bringing down Shechina B'Tachtenim, and the Rebbe is using every single type of the arsenal in the neshek, in the ammunition, any type of ammunition that's possible that was ever known to man. If it's the stories of the Rabbeim, if it's Torah of the Rabbeim, if it's the Nigunim of the Rabbeim, if it's mentioning the names, every single type of power possible that Rebbe is harnessing and giving to us in order to fulfill that mission, which is what it's all about. And that's not a 70 years ago story. That's a story tonight, 70 years later. It's an interesting thing. L'chaim, l'chaim. Let's start with a story. One of the stories. Everybody probably heard this story. It's an interesting thing that this story, to the best of my knowledge, was not publicized until, I think, 20 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. It was YUD SHVAT, not 20 years ago. I think even 10 years ago. I think it was Shishim Shana, maybe it was Chamishim Shana, maybe 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. I don't remember. I remember I was in New York at the time when the story was first told. A mind-boggling story, which for some reason, the one who it happened with told the story. And yet for some reason, for at least 50 years or maybe 60 years, he never told the story for some reason. I mean, we know the reason. It's obvious what the reason is. Because the time had not come yet for him to tell it. How did he know when the time came? I don't know how he knew, but I know that the Eibishter runs the world, and that the Eibishter decided that now's a time when we have to get this story. So it's like a fairly recent story, if you want to put it like that. It was the night of Yud Shvat, Tavshin Yud Aleph. Tuesday night. Wednesday was Yud Shvat, it was Tuesday night. And you can imagine what type of mood the Chassidim were in. I don't mean what type of mood, but they were inspired. It was, you're talking about, number one, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't there. There's maybe people, I believe that there are people on this Fabrengen that were there at the time. I definitely wasn't there at the time. So those who were there, Mustama, they remember it. But Al Kol Panim, you can imagine the Chassidim that were there at that time. There were many of them that, most of them, they saw the Frierdiker Rebbe. They had seen the Frierdiker Rebbe, they had met the Frierdiker Rebbe, they had lived with the Frierdiker Rebbe. And now it was his first yard site. You can imagine what type of feeling they were inspired, whatever it may be. In addition, the Rebbe had given out a letter a few days before Yud Shvat, where the Rebbe gave a detailed Hoirais, what to do on Yud Shvat. I'm sure there were Chassidim learning Mishnayos, there were Chassidim preparing to go to the oil. The oil had just been built. Tavshin Yud Aleph, the oil, the actual oil was built only then. Chassidim were preparing to go to the oil. Chassidim were preparing, they were connecting, they were learning Basiligani, whatever they were doing. I don't believe anyone was sleeping that night. And Reb Moshe Groner was in the room of the Rebbe's maskiros, of the Rebbe's office, or of the secretaries of the Rebbe's office. And it's 1 o'clock in the middle of the night, and the phone rings. He answers the phone, and it's the Rebbe on the other side of the phone. And the Rebbe says to him, if it's not too hard for you, then can I ask you to please come over to my apartment? The Rebbe's apartment at that time was, if I'm not mistaken, Eastern Parkway and New York. The Rebbe had a small apartment over there. And the Rebbe asked, please come over to my apartment. So of course he runs over quickly. And he sees the Rebbe sitting by the table. And the Rebbe has some Sforim open, piled up, Sforim opened up. And the Rebbe turns to him and the Rebbe says, I'm very busy now. And I need to call, this is in the middle of the night, as we said, I need to call the doctor. And I'm not getting through. Do you mind dialing? Now, for those of you who are my age or older, you definitely remember this. And those who are younger, not necessarily. But it wasn't the phones where you push the buttons. The phones was like you stick your finger in the hole and it goes, 1 is tick, 2 is tick, tick, 3 is tick, 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 and you're dialing each one, you're going through and it's going back. And then after you finished, it rings, 10, 15 times, I don't remember how many times. And then it just goes. There's no answering machines and there's no dial back. You start all over again and you keep on calling. And if it rings 10 times and the person on the other side isn't answering, then you keep on doing it, and every time you get the noise, and then you start all over again. So the Rebbe asked him, if you don't mind, can you just keep on dialing until the person on the other side answers? Apparently the person on the other side wasn't answering, probably for a good reason, because it was 1 o'clock in the morning. Good. Sure. He dials, whatever. Finally, a tired voice comes on the line. And the Rebbe takes the phone, and he can hear from the Rebbe's side of the conversation, the Rebbe is speaking to a doctor. And the Rebbe is trying to convince the doctor. In those days, there was house visits. And the Rebbe is trying to convince the doctor that there's a woman who needs him to come now. And the doctor, for understandable reasons, it's the middle of the night and it's freezing cold. It's the middle of SHVAT. It's freezing cold outside. And the doctor says, I think she can wait a few hours. I'll come in the morning. And the Rebbe is with his, no, she needs you to come now. Finally, the doctor's not budging. And finally, the Rebbe says to the doctor, if I come now to get you, will you come? And the doctor says, apparently, the doctor said yes. The Rebbe puts on his coat and the Rebbe turns to Moshe Waghner. The Rebbe says to him the following. I'm very busy now. If you don't mind, the Rebbe says, I have to go now to the doctor, to get the doctor. I'm going to give you, the Rebbe pulls out a paper with Mare Mekaymes. And the Rebbe says, can you just pull these Sforim out of the bookshelf and put them on the table, open up, so that at least it will save me some time when I come back. And he does it, and the Rebbe goes and gets the doctor, apparently. The Rebbe comes back, thanks him, and the next day there's a Farbrengen. Wednesday night, YUD Aleph SHVAT Tafshin YUD Aleph. And the Rebbe says the Maimer Basi Legani, and the Rebbe Moshe Waghner notices that he recognizes these sources from the Rabbeim because that was in the Sfarim that the Rebbe asked him to open. In the Maimer Basi Legani, the Rebbe tells stories of each one of the Rabbeim. And in those stories that the Rebbe tells, the Rebbe is telling how each one of the Rabbeim stopped in the middle of doing the most important things in the world and went to help one Jew somewhere in Egvelt. Despite the fact that it makes no sense, and that's Shtus Digdusha. And while the Rebbe was preparing, so to speak, for the Maimer, the Rebbe himself did the same thing. Because if you think about it, it would probably make sense that the Rebbe should send Moshe Groner to the doctor and he should continue to prepare the Maimer. Instead, the Rebbe asked Moshe Groner to prepare the Maimer and he went to get the doctor. And this is the most mind-boggling concept of Shtus Dikdusha. And the mind-boggling concept is not only, it's with every single one of those stories. It's the story of the Alter Rebbe, where the Alter Rebbe leaves in the middle of davening. And in the Maimer, the Rebbe doesn't say, but in other places it says that it was Yom Kippur. And the Alter Rebbe takes off his talis and goes to the edge of town and chops wood and cooks soup for a woman who just had a baby and there was no one there to feed her, to give her food. The Alter Rebbe, when he davened, what do you think the Alter Rebbe was doing when he was davening? I'm sure that when the Alter Rebbe davened, he connected to the Eibishter on the highest level. And I'm sure that when the Alter Rebbe davened, he reached the highest possible levels that there are. But I don't believe that that was the Alter Rebbe's davening. The Alter Rebbe's davening, especially on Yom Kippur, was something which only a Rebbe can do, not only because it's the highest type of davening, but it was something which wasn't for him, it was for the whole Seder Ishtalshul, was for the whole world, for the universe, for all the spiritual worlds, for things that we don't even know and understand. Alter Rebbe was accomplishing in his davening. And there is no one else in the world that can do that. And yet the Alter Rebbe stopped in the middle of that and took off his talis to go cook soup for a yildis, for a woman who had a baby who needed to have that soup. The Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe was the highest level that can be. The Mittler Rebbe's chassidus was the deepest chassidus possible. The Mittler Rebbe himself, as a Rebbe, was in the highest place that can be. And yet, he went down from his level and connected to someone who's a sinner. Connected, not just connected, connected to the extent that it made him sick. The Tzemach Tzedek wanted to come in contact and to be able to see his grandfather, the Alter Rebbe. Why do you think he needed to see the Alter Rebbe? Because he had questions in his learning in Nigla and Chassidus? Because he had questions in Avodah? Possibly. But I would guess to say that when the Tzemach Tzedek needed to see the Alter Rebbe and ask him questions, it was questions which weren't just to make him understand something a little bit better or to make him understand better in his Avodah, but it was questions which were negeya to the whole Seder Ishtalshelus. And here he was about to daven in order to enable him to do that. And he stopped because he realized that there's a Jew who needs a few kopecks to buy a calf in order to be able to go out to marketplace and make business. They shouldn't lose the opportunity of the marketing. The Rebbe Marash, he was so busy that he didn't have time to say Chassidus at length. He was so busy that he was finished davening by 8 o'clock in the morning. What was he busy doing? A Rebbe, we know, probably davens at length, and he says Chassidus at length. He was too busy to do those things. What was he busy with? I don't even know. I don't know. He was a Rebbe, and he was busy doing what the Rebbes do. He was busy doing things that a Rebbe does. And yet he went on a whole trip for one Jew. For one Jew, in order to bring him back to Yiddishkeit, one Jew was sitting in the gambling room, drinking Yain Nesech, to tell him, Junger man, Yain Nesech is mit Tantem Amoyach Valev Zayayit. The Rebbe Rashab, his brother told him he's going for a gzeira, which was a gzeira decree for the physical parnasa of Jews. And his brother told him, I'll go to Moscow, you stay here and be a Rebbe. Instead, he said, no, I'll go to Moscow. Why? Because that's what a Rebbe is. If you think about it, why didn't the Baal Shem Tov want to become a Rebbe? Why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu want to become a Rebbe? Why didn't the Alter Rebbe want to become a Rebbe? Why didn't the Rebbe want to become a Rebbe? Each one of them sat and argued with the Eibishter for days, or for months, or for years, that they refused. They didn't want to become a Rebbe. Why? Was it Zigat? Think about it. The Baal Shem Tov, before he was revealed as the Baal Shem Tov, he wasn't helping Jews. He was helping Jews. He was involved. That was his whole life, was involved with helping Jews. The Alter Rebbe, before he became a Rebbe, he wasn't helping Jews. The Rebbe, before YUD Tafshin Yud Aleph, the Rebbe was the head of Machni Yisrael, the head of Kahas, the head of Merkez Linyani Chinuch. The Rebbe was involved in doing everything to help Jews. So he was helping Jews already. So what was it? What was the terrible thing of becoming a Rebbe? It wasn't like he was saying, I want to be in my own corner and daven and learn, and I'm not going to get involved with people. He was involved with people. But if you look at the stories of the Baal Shem Tov, you look at the story of the Alter Rebbe, and you look at the stories, and you see a very interesting thing. A Rebbe is on a whole new level. The Alter Rebbe writes it in the Maimer and Parshas Shmois, Misam Pela Adam. The Alter Rebbe explains why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu want to go to Mitzrayim and fulfill his mission in taking the Jewish people out of Egypt. And the Alter Rebbe says because Moshe Rabbeinu was in the world of Toyu. Now I want to tell you a secret. Moshe Rabbeinu from the world of Toyu, from the Shemitah Rishena, nevertheless, Vayigdal Moshe Vayetze Alecha. He did what he could to save Jews and to inspire Jews and to tell them Mashiach is coming, the Gula is coming. It's not like he didn't get involved and help his fellow Jews. But he said, I'll help, but I'll help from my level where I am, because only I can be up there in Shemitah Rishena. Don't force me to go down, to have to draw it down into the world. From where I am, I'll sit there and I'll have Avas Yisrael and I'll do what I can to help a fellow Jew. And the Eibishter said, Misam Pela Adam. If you understand the purpose and the goal of Atzmos U'Mahos, that the Eibishter wants you specifically to become a Rebbe, to get involved with the single Jews out there in the corner of the world. And that's what the Rebbe was saying in the Maimer, YUD Tafshin Yud Aleph. The Rebbe was saying something unbelievable. The Rebbe was saying how each one of the Rabbeim, Shtus Digdusha, they gave up the highest things that there are, not for themselves. The highest things that they're doing for the whole Seder Ishtalshelus. For what purpose? For one Jew needs help. And it's an amazing concept. Because if you look at it, the difference between the stories of the other Rabbeim and the story of the Rebbe is that the stories of the other Rabbeim were something which was part of the Maimer. And the story of the Rebbe is the whole essence of the Maimer. It's everything. It's not a story that was told. It's a story that happened. It's a story which was part of the whole Maimer. And you think about it. The Rebbe, even in a sense, more than all the other stories of the Rabbeim, because the Alter Rebbe, he had to go do it himself, because that's what it says in Shulchan Aruch, mitzvah begadol. You needed a Rebbe to go and chop wood. The Middle Rebbe, definitely. Someone who's not a Rebbe can't connect to someone else in such a way. Etc., etc. The Rebbe was involved in things which was the tachlis of the whole Seder Ishtalshelus. The Rebbe was involved in doing something which was changing the world, bringing the world to its destiny, And in the middle of that, the Rebbe stopped to go bring the doctor. The Rebbe could have sent someone else to bring the doctor. But the Rebbe said, that's a Rebbe. That's what a Rebbe is all about. A Rebbe is someone who puts everything on the side and goes to help one single Jew that needs help. Al tikra vayikra vayakri. And in the Maimer of YUD SHVAT Tavshin Yud Aleph, on the night of YUD SHVAT Tavshin Yud Aleph, something happened 70 years ago, and it's completed now. And it's something which we have to realize. In a certain sense, unlike the Deira Rishain, and unlike the first 6 generations of Chassidus Chabad, in the 7th generation, the Rebbe made each and every one of us into, so to speak, a Rebbe. And like the Rebbe said it many times, and the Rebbe said there's nothing to be afraid of that. Each Jew is an Admir. The Rebbe at that time, and like the Rebbe says, the Alter Rebbe is the Sfira of Chachma, etc., etc. The Frierdiker Rebbe is the Sfira of Yesod. And the Rebbe continues, more than once the Rebbe says this, V'yishleimar, shebedeirenu zeh, in our generation, kol echad ve'achas me'anshe adeir, every single one of the people of the generation, anashim, nashim, b'taf, men, women, and children, em sfiras ha-malchus, or the sfira of malchus. The Rebbe is not just trying to be humble, so he doesn't want to say, I'm sfiras ha-malchus. The Rebbe is telling us a reality, that whilst in previous generations, because it was the other sfiras, the Rebbe was that sfira, and the Chassidim were the ones who received from it. In Malchus, in Deira Shvi, Rebbe and Chassidim are one. It's not that the Rebbe is sfiras ha-malchus and we're something else. We are all one extension of the Rebbe. We're not a separate entity of our own. And like the Rebbe said on Gimel Shvat, Tavshin and Beis, there's no Aaron. There's no Aaron because each one of us is the Aaron. Each one of us is the one who spreads the Rebbe's message. And the Rebbe tells us how to do it. It doesn't matter the most important things you can be involved with. You can be involved with the highest things in the world that you're the only one who can do them. And no one else can do it. And yet you leave those great, amazing things that you have and that you're involved in doing. And you go to the other end of the world to do what? To have influence, to help one single Jew that needs your help. And who's that one single Jew? Someone who ran away, someone who doesn't know Aleph Beis, and someone who's not interested in your help. And you don't know if he'll listen to you. And yet leave all the important things that you're involved with in order to help that one single Jew, because that is Deira Shvi. Al tikra vayikra ela vayakri. Go out there and bring a lakus into the lowest place. Bring this galus of Mashiach, because when you know there's Netzach, I have to win the war. The way to win the war is not with cheshbainis, not when it makes sense. Not when it makes sense because I'm going to accomplish more things and I'm going to conquer more things. But when it's one thing and one thing only, victory, I'm going to win, not accomplish, I'm going to win. I'm going to win completely. I'm going to win 100%, and win is through putting everything on the side, and the only thing that counts is winning. And in order to win, I go out there to help and to spread the word, the hope, the faith, the light, the strength to one single Jew. To tell one Jew, not just to tell him, but to bring him to realization that Igi Azman Gulaschem, that Hine Zeh Mashiach Ba. To give him that, to strengthen his feeling that he should realize and understand and connect to that reality and live it. For that, it's worth leaving everything on the side. Leik zich auf Zeit, in the words of the Maimer. Leik zich auf Zeit, he puts himself on the side. He puts everything, his gashmias and his ruchnias on the side, and he goes and finds a Jew that doesn't know Aleph Beis, and he brings him to Al Tikra Vayikra Ela Vayakri, that he should call out that Havai is Keil Elam, that there's nothing else, and that he should call out that other people should hear it. This is who we are. This is what we are. This is our mission as Deira Shvi. And it's Shtus the Kedusha because it doesn't make any sense. There is no way to explain how that is possible. In Seichel, it makes no sense. But that's taking the Shtus of Lumazeh. Because the Shtus of Lumazeh is that we do things in the world that don't make sense also. When I want to do those things in the world, they also don't make sense. And yet now instead, our job is to transform that into Shtus the Kedusha, to be Mahapich the Cheshach and Ner. It makes no sense, but I'm going to go and know the power of Netzach to win the war. L'chaim, 70 years of Avodah, 70 years of fulfilling that mission. 70 years when now we're at the culmination of those 70 years. The culmination of 70 years, whether it's the first 42 and 28, I don't know. 42 when it was in one way, revealed the 42 Masais in the Midbar, the 42 levels, like the Rebbe says, the 42 letters of Ana B'Chayach, Milamata L'Mayla, of elevating the world, and then the 28 of bringing the Koyach, which is the Koyach of the concealed, of the potential of a Lakus, which is hidden, but bringing it as 28, which is 3 times 3 times 3, with the shleimus of it, to bring it lemata me'asara tvachim mamish. So now's the time, l'chala deis, when we're ready and we prepared and we're here, and we just got to go out there and go out here and say, we are doing it, we're winning the war right now, l'chaim. So we can sing the niggas of the Rebbe Marash. It's probably everyone we can sing with. I can't know what. Did ya ma 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 ya ma ma ma. Did ya ma 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 mo ya ma ma ma. Ay, 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 la da da da. Chaim, Chaim.
לא. עכשיו רגע.
לחיים, הרב וגנר.
Chaim וברכה.
אפשר אולי להמשיך בעברית, אני לא יודע. האמת היא לא, תמשיך באנגלית, אני חושב. יש אנשים שלא מבינים. לא, אף אחד לא ביקש, כנראה שכולם מבינים אנגלית יותר יותר.
הם לא מבקשים, אז כנראה. אוקיי.
נכון, עברית עכשיו.
If we look at the Maimer, Basi Legani, you see an interesting thing.
זה עברית? זה בעברית?
עברית, אוקיי, אם זה צריך להיות בעברית, זה יהיה בעברית. אם ככה, בסדר. אז נדבר, נגיד בעברית.
האמת, צריכים לשאול לרובם, מי שלא מבין עברית.
נו.
ישנם כאלה שלא מדברים, יש כאלה שלא מדברים עברית.
אז חבל בשבילהם.
כן, אנחנו מבינים, קצת קשה לנו רע, אבל מבינים, את הרעיון מבינים. הכל בסדר.
אז מה המסקנה?
נמשיך באנגלית.
אנגלית. אנגלית. אוקיי. בסדר. לחיים, לחיים. You see in the Maimer, Basi Legani, there's three besides for the stories, there's twice that the Rebbe mentions each one of the Rabbeim, and then a third time where the Rebbe just mentions the names of each one of the Rabbeim. And they get another Indian. The first time is in the first Tois, when the Rebbe is explaining the Indian of Iker Shechina, and the Rebbe is explaining what is the Shechina. The second time is in already Ois Dalet and Hey, when the Rebbe is explaining the Indian of the why the Tachlis HaKavana, why the purpose of creation is specifically down here. Then there's the stories, and then the Rebbe just mentions that all the Rabbeim, and mentions the names of all the Rabbeim, explain that Histalkus doesn't mean to leave. Histalkus means that he's right here, but it's on a higher level, on a level which is removed from us, which is completely higher. Good. If you look at the 3 times of the first Tois, and the second time where the Rebbe brings from each one of the Rabbeim, and then the stories, perhaps it seems like the Nekuda Tichayna, the central point in all those 3 places is in the Rebbe Marash. Look at the beginning. The Rebbe explains from each one of the Rabbeim what's Shechina. But then the Rebbe explains something from the Rebbe Marash, which is the central point of it all. Shechina, the Rebbe says over there, the reason why the highest level of godly revelation is called Shechina is because from the first place, from the very beginning of Gili Elokus, of Elokus being revealed its purpose and its goal is so that it should be revealed in the Eilamis and in Nishmes Yisrael, in the worlds and in the Neshamis of Yidden. And therefore, originally, it's also Shechina. An amazingly powerful thing. And if you look at it, you see that each one of the Rabbeim that the Rebbe is mentioning, the Rebbe is going through sort of a, not just saying a word from each of the Rabbeim. The Rebbe is taking us through a journey through how each Rebbe brought the Shechina another level. The Alter Rebbe, you can see that the Kuda of what the Alter Rebbe says, the meaning of Chachma. The Mittel Rebbe is the meaning of Bina, and Tzemach Tzedek is Das, v'chulu v'chulu. The Rebbe Maharash, we know, is Sfiras HaNetzach. The Sfira of Netzach. In the Sfira of Netzach, which that's connected to number Yud Aleph, number 11. The whole idea of Netzach is connected to 11, where it's the essence is dafke down here. The essence itself is revealed down here. In this union of the Sfira of Netzach is what the Rebbe Maharash says, that the essence, the purpose, the reason why Kav is called Shechina is because Milchatchila, its revelation is down here in the Eilamis and Nishmis Yisrael. The same thing the second time when the Rebbe quotes all of the Rebbeim, and the Rebbe quotes from the Rebbe Maharash, that even though when we do mitzvahs, we're adding Eiris and Atzilus, we're adding extra energy in the world of Atzilus, that's only, it's like in storage over there. But the whole purpose of it is for down here. If you can take a muscle, which is explained elsewhere in Chassidus, the idea of when we do mitzvahs, it adds Eiris and Atzilus. When a person does a mitzvah, he's doing two things. He's refining the physical world, and he's elevating the light and the energy of a lakus, which is trapped in the physical world. He's freeing it so that it's ready to be revealed. But it's not yet revealed in this world, because this world is still a world of concealment. When Mashiach comes, we bring it down and we reveal it into this world. Where is it in the meantime? It's in the world of Atzilus. What does it mean it's in the world of Atzilus? Explains the Rebbe Maharash, it's like it's in a box. What does that mean? It's like it's in a box. If we can imagine a mashal in Gashmis, which at times the Rebbe gives this mashal. Imagine someone has a Swiss bank account. Okay, I have $10 billion in the Swiss bank account. Am I rich? I'm rich, right? If I have $10 billion in my bank account, I'm rich. But practically, two things. Number one, I can't access that money because I don't know yet the code. I forgot the code, or I didn't get access to the code, or whatever it is. I can't access that money. So, but Payal Mamish, I could be living in a what do you call it? In a mobile home, in a trailer, because I don't have any money at the moment. But I'm the richest person in the world because I have $10 billion in a Swiss bank account. But I can't access it. Does that mean I'm not rich? I'm still rich. Why am I rich? Because I have $10 billion, but right now I can't access it. Now, why am I holding? Why is it in a bank account? There's a very simple reason why I'm holding it in a bank account, because in that bank, they don't have like piles of dollar bills, which I don't have enough space in my house to put all those piles of dollar bills. Those piles of dollar bills for the $10 billion don't even exist in the world. There's not enough dollar bills in the world for those $10 billion. But in the bank, they have the kalim, they have the programs or SHVAT, I don't know, whatever they have to have, and it's there, that money. Now, is the bank rich because they have my $10 billion? No. They're the ones who have it, but it's not theirs, it's mine. They have it because they're able to access it, because they have the kalim to be able to deal with it. but it's mine. I'm the one who's rich. But the fact is that at the moment I can't even access it. And that's exactly what happens with the Eidos when they go to Atzilus. From all the mitzvahs that we've done throughout history, we as in the Jewish people, we as in the world, Elam Hazeh is rich. Rich in Eidos, rich in spiritual energy that was being added throughout the generations. But at the moment we can't access it, so it's sitting in Atzilus in the bank account. Atzilus doesn't have it, doesn't belong to Atzilus. It's ours. Just because we can't access it, the fact that we're still rich. And that's what the Rebbe Maharash explains. And that's what the Rebbe says is our job now to recognize that we're rich, because in a second we'll reveal it. That's this Galus of Mashiach. To know that it's here and we have to reveal it. But the most amazing thing, the Rebbe Maharash is the one who explains it. Just like the Rebbe Maharash explains that Kav is called Shechina because its purpose is for the world's and Nishmas Yisrael. Also, the Rebbe Maharash explains that the Eidos that we added in Atzilus and all those great energy that's there in Atzilus is not in Atzilus, it's here. We have it. And then you have the story of the Rebbe Maharash, which is also the same thing. With all the stories of all the other Rabbeim, the Alter Rebbe, when he went to the Yeldis in order to chop wood and cook her a soup, the Alter Rebbe didn't come there as the Alter Rebbe. I mean, he was the Alter Rebbe, and she maybe knew it was the Alter Rebbe. But she saw someone who's the Alter Rebbe chopping wood for her. It wasn't the Alter Rebbe mitzvah begadol, and that's why he went there himself. But the mitzvah is to chop wood, which chopping wood is something anyone can do. The Mittler Rebbe, when he's connected with the simple person, he's connected with him. That means he's going down from his level. The Rebbe Maharash, when he went there to Paris and stayed in the hotel and went into the gambling room in order to tell the Jew, Junger man, Yain Mesech is mitamtem aleva meach zayayid. It was the Rebbe Maharash speaking in the gambling room to the Jew who was drinking Yain Nesech. It was the connection of the essence of Kav and the Elemis of Nishmas Yisrael. It's the connection of the Eidos of Atzilus that they're here in Elam Hazeh Tachten. It was the connection of the Rebbe Maharash there with the koyach of the Rebbe Maharash right there in the lowest place. And this is the power of Netzach. The highest is in the lowest. The highest is revealed in the lowest. It's here. It's here in us who we don't have seichel, we don't have midas, it doesn't matter. We have the koiches that the Rebbe revealed in us, YUD Aleph SHVAT Tavshin YUD Aleph, the koiches that for 70 years, now in the shleimus of 70 years, we have them b'shleimus, we have the koiches of Atzmus in Seif down here in the lowest place, and we have the power to reveal it. It's munach bekufsa, and we have the key. And the same thing in this story, we are the ones who are able to tell a different Jew who doesn't know Aleph Beis and he's drinking Yain Nesech, or we can tell ourselves, the Nefesh Abam is inside us. Junger man, Yain Nesech is mitamtem aleva meach zayayit. We have that power that we're there. We are in the lowest place. The etzem is there in the lowest place and can draw us out and bring us to the realization. And in our time, it's not just Yain Nesech is mitamtem aleva meach zayayid. In our time, it's mostly the word zayayid. And zayayid means remember your mission, remember the story, remember the war, remember the victory, bring this galus of Mashiach. Don't get lost. Don't get confused on the way. You have the highest keiches. It's here. 70 years, Tavshin Pei Aleph, Yud Aleph Shvat, the highest keiches are here. Zayayid, win the war. Be menatziach the milchama, because the melech is mevazbiz the eitzris. The melech takes those treasures that What does a treasure mean, like the Rebbe explains in the Maimer? What is a treasure? A treasure is something that is not possible to reveal it, to use it. It's not made for spending. It's not money. A king doesn't need money. Kesef, Vizov, he doesn't need it. The treasure is maybe like that Swiss bank account. The treasure is something which is sasum v'chasum miyin kol reya, because it's not shayich to be revealed. It's not money that can be spent. It's something which is not even just precious stones. It's something which is above. It's the most precious things in the world that are not shayich to be seen. They're there and they're moisif. They add in the kingdom by the very fact that they exist. Because the king doesn't even show them to anyone, except in special times when he makes a wedding of Bnei Yechida, and even then, he only shows some of the treasures, and he only shows them. But when it comes to Nitzuach HaMilchama, those treasures which are the most precious things in the world, they're things which aren't able to be revealed, definitely not to be used. And the king is mevazbis the Eitzves. He squanders them. He gives them out without a cheshbon, without a calculation. For who? He gives them to the Sarei Tzava. He gives them to the generals. He gives them to the Rabbeim. He gives them to the Rabbeim, and like we say on every single basi legani again and again, the Alte Rebbe, the Mittel Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Marash, the Rebbe Rashab, the Friedrich Rebbe, and most through that he gives them all to the Rebbe. And we don't suffice with that, and as the years go by, we add the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid, and then we add the Arizal and the Shimon ben Yochai and the Rambam. Everything. All of them. But for who? For who does he give it? Not for the generals. He gives it to the generals so that they should give it to the simple foot soldiers who don't even appreciate, who don't even understand, who have no hasaga what these treasures are. And he gives it so that they, who don't understand anything, should win the war. The Anshe Chayil Apshutim, the simple soldiers. And that's what we have. That's what we have. That's what we got. And that's what we have here on YUD SHVAT Tafshin Pei Aleph. YUD Aleph SHVAT Tafshin Pei Aleph. We have these treasures. We have the treasures in a way of bizbus. We have the treasures so that we can win the war. And there's something else to remember, like we said beforehand, that in the sphere of Malchus, it's not only the Rebbe is the sphere of Malchus, it's a davar pele b'yeser. When it comes to the sphere of Malchus, kol echad ve'achas me'anshe adeir anoshim nashim v'tafim spheres Malchus. Every single man, woman, and child in Deir Hashvi is spheres Malchus. We are an extension of the Rebbe because we don't have our own seichel, our own midas. We are the foot soldiers of a Kabbalah sale. We have the etzem of a lakus. We have the greatest keiches possible. We just have to tap into it and know the Eibishter puts it all there because he wants us to win the war. Good. The ikir is, we're doing it. We have it, and it's time now to just go through and win the war because there's no more time to waste. So l'chaim, we should get together, and like we said before in the beginning, atem teluktu echad b'nei Yisrael. Echad, each one of us is echad, sitting by our own computer screens. And echad v'atem to look to, we're all gathered together. We're all gathered together, but as Yidden together. And it's not just together, it's together, like the Rebbe said at that time in Tafshin and Beis by the Chanukah Live, that it's actually taking through the L'chaims and the Nigunim and the words of Torah and the words of Yisraelus and all the inyanim that we're speaking are all taking through the whole Seder Ishtalshalos, the whole Metzias of the world, because it's everywhere. It's everywhere. If you don't have a computer screen to take it in, so you don't have the keli to take it in, but it's here, it's in the world. And the ikir is that the same thing is that Mashiach is in the world. Mashiach is in every single place and in every single aspect of the world. And we now have to develop and we have to open up our kelim and be able to see him and be able to feel him and be able to connect him in order to be able to bring the total and complete Isgalus. Like the Rebbe said in the end of the Maimer, Nizke Zenzach, Dal Lamata, and like the Rebbe says, Hu Yigoleinu, that the Rebbe should take us out of Galus this year. Early YUD SHVAT, Tavshin Pei Aleph, Matzi Shabbos Kodesh, Parsha V'Bnei Yisrael, Yetzim B'Yad Rama. We should go out B'Yad Rama. Hashem Yimlich Leilam Vod. Take of me, Mamish L'chaim, L'chaim.
L'chaim, Shkoyach, Waghner. Was a beautiful.
L'chaim, Shkoyach, L'chaim.
שכוייח, לחיים, שכוייח.
ואגנר, היום כשלמדנו את המיימר, אני חשבתי שהנקודה שהרבי אומר שצבועס זה עניין של אחדות, בעצם אחרי שלומדים את מה שהסברתם עכשיו על עניין של צבא, גם אחדות יכול להיות בשתי אופנים. יכול להיות אחדות שעושים את זה כי עם השני ביחד, יכול להיות יותר משתלם, יותר טוב, ויכול להיות אחדות מצד אותו עניין של ההתמסרות הזאת, שמפסיקים להיות איש פרטי. כמו שהרבי מביא באחד המאמרים האלה, שהגרעין הוא נרכב לגמרי. מפסיק להיות גרעין, אז מתחיל להיות לצעוק האינסוף, יוצא העץ עם כל הכוחות, עם כל הדברים. אז האחדות יכול להיות או בגלל שאני נותן מקום לשני, או בגלל שאני מפסיק להיות אני, אז במילא אנחנו מתאחדים. ואז זה שתי הנקודות אותו דבר, זה קשור עם המסירות נפש. זה לא משהו אחר, זה אמנם נכון אליו, כן, זה התנועה, איך שאדם נמצא.
עיקר הדריני זו זכופתן, תגב מיד ממש, זה עיקר. בסדר, שיהיה בהצלחה רבה, שנתראה בפברנגן הכי גדול, היום בלילה, בפברנגן הכי גדול, יסגל של מלך המשיח.
אמן.
Thank you very much, Waghner.
Grazie a tutti i partecipanti.
Isaac Baruch, Rabbi Waghner. Isaac Baruch, Stema.
Koltu.
Shkoyach.